Okay, at this point, we are live on YouTube. Want to thank everybody for coming in third format. This is a first for all of us, but hopefully this goes really smoothly. The only person that's not here tonight is Raquel. She had another engagement, but that's okay. We still have quorum, so there's no issue there. But if you'll just take a second and look at the agenda for this evening. Sent this out. We met, which was February, unfortunately. We'll review those minutes first. And then we're going to do a quick Title I update with everything going on with MTI, the state's. We're going to talk about the SBDM elections. You know, typically we would be doing those right now for next year. Obviously, we're kind of in a weird spot this year, so it'll look just a smidge different this year, but we'll talk about what that'll look like. And then I sent out the draft 2021 master schedule a little over a week ago to get feedback from teachers and staff. And so I was going to share that with you and also review it and possibly approve that tonight. And then I wanted to just quickly share, because the last time we met was, again, February. We've had a lot of hires since then. So I wanted to share an update with you guys on 4 of those individuals that we've had the opportunity to hire, give you a little background on them. And then finally, we're going to look at the 2021 SBDM budget, which is obviously there's some really important items that we do need to cover. So does anybody have any questions about that, about the agenda? Can I get a motion to approve it?
I second it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
Were you getting ready to speak up, April?
I was getting ready to say, I can run upstairs and get my laptop.
No, I didn't see who moved.
Well, usually Kristen fights you to do it, so.
We'll find it.
Okay.
All right.
So who made the first motion?
I did.
Okay. And I seconded it. Can I second it or?
You can. Yes, you can.
Okay.
And then all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. So we'll jump straight in. February's minutes. I'll let you look over those really quickly. I'm not going to read through those in detail, but you can look at the items that we did discuss. We talked about the math night. That didn't end up happening, unfortunately, but we did a good plan in place for that. We looked at the attendance plan and updated that. The big thing was we reviewed the professional development plan it's in the minutes, but I did not get a signature on that page. So what I'm going to do, there's an e-signature app that you can add. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to somehow add that to that document, and then I'll send that out for you guys to sign electronically. I'm going to try to toy around with that tomorrow to sign off on. We talked about the staffing allocations at our last meeting, February 25th. Can I get a motion to approve?
I approve.
A second?
Tamara for.
So quickly to update you guys on Title I, typically we would be having a spring math night, which we planned out in detail. That didn't end up happening. Unfortunately, the KD required in the spring, so we're not going to be required to do a spring evening, which would be impossible to do at this point. So really, at this point, we're probably just going to be looking towards starting the process of thinking about next year. We don't really have to plan any specific event for the remainder of this evening or for the remainder of this year due to everything that's been going on. So that's really the only update that I have at this point. But that's honestly, that's a really positive thing. I'm glad that they were able to do that. So the other thing that we need to discuss is SBDM elections. Like I said earlier, at this point, we would have already kind of started the process of getting those elections going. But with us not being in school, we had to wait on guidance to figure out exactly what that would look like, because there's a lot of rules and regulations all around that. And they have to be done in a very secure way, which always poses a concern when you're doing it virtually. But what the Kentucky Department of Education has come out with is that you are going to be able to do those virtually. And really, outside of that, nothing's going to change as far as the manner in which it's run. A certified staff member will, when we request names for nominations, and they'll also be the ones that take those names and want to select somebody that would be willing to run the election. Now, I'm going to throw an idea out there, and I want to get your feedback. We have a member of the Site-Based Decision-Making Council this year that is retiring, and so I feel like that would be a tremendous person to run it, because they can be just, there's no, if you were asked to do that.
Yes, I would.
Okay. So I wanted to get everybody's feedback on that. Are you all okay with Ms. Thomas running that election?
That sounds wonderful.
Awesome. And thank you, Ms. Thomas. We really appreciate you.
Again, April, did I get in your business right there?
I love it. I think it's terrible. I'm gonna have to call you up next year and be like, where are you, Leslie?
So the form that will go out originally, just to make sure that it's done in a way that it's anonymous, but it also is secure, so people can't vote more than one time and all of those things. But as far as sending the form out and any of the information that comes back from the form, I will not touch that. I will not see it. The only thing that I will get is, after the elections have been conducted, I will get the total vote count, and then I hold on to those for 3 years as evidence of the elections taking place. Any questions about that? Okay. So the next thing, and this is where I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about, is the draft 2021 master schedule. I sent this out a little over a week ago. I wanted to get feedback on that. I didn't get, just an incredible number of emails about it. Most people were very pleased. Draft schedule. I sent it. I'll be honest with you. I sent it to Ms. Cummings in the cafeteria, because one of the priorities that I think we needed to look at going into next year is to make sure that lunchroom is not overly crowded. And I'm extremely pleased to tell you that there will never be a time on this master schedule where that cafeteria be more than half. There will never be a time when there's more than one grade in that cafeteria with them. So first grade will be the only other grade that will be in the cafeteria when kindergarten's in there. And anybody that's been around, and I think that will really slow things down a little bit. I think it's going to cut back a lot of the behavior that we've had too, just because of certified and classified. And again, the majority of the feedback was really positive. Really didn't have to make hardly any tweaks. There were a few things that people requested, but with the co-teaching structure that we talked about, second grade completely overlap, because then you can't have co-teaching in both of those time periods. And so some of the changes weren't possible, but even the ones that requested some small tweaks, they indicated they were very happy with the overall schedule. I didn't get anybody that said they absolutely hated it. So I thought that was wonderful. This protects clinics in grades 1st, 3rd grade. It also ensures that there's 40 to 45 minutes of writing in kindergarten through 5th grade. It protects math as well, so you don't see a drop in the number of math minutes there, anywhere between about an hour and 10 minutes to an hour and a half, K through 5, where I wish there was just a little more time. But the majority of them have a little bit more time than they had last year for social studies and science. Wellness, I think, is spread out really nicely as well among all grade levels, so that there's not a ton of overlap there. In addition to that, I think the special area schedule goes back to what it was before this year. What do you folks prefer? And I think that's probably best as well. And then the other thing that you'll notice on the schedule that I'm really excited about, and we saw the impact of this school year. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail of what that'll look like, because currently Ms. Reed and Ms. Forgy are working on a structure. It will be essentially a planned lesson structure for all grades K through 5. So it's not going to add a ton onto the plate of teachers, but it is going to allow for some intentional community building, but then also soft skills and social skills instruction. And then it's going to allow for kids to reflect on that at the end of the day. I think what you'll also find is that there's going to be a lot of individual goal setting that kids are going to goals for themselves. And when students move into tier 2 and tier 3, that's where it gets a little bit more intentional, and we're really, really beneficial. And for all students, but particularly for our students that come from risk homes and backgrounds. So I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that.
Shelby was a little worried that her lunch was going to be later, but other than that, we were good.
I thought it looked good for kindergarten.
Kristen, how did you feel?
Having the lunches spread out, I think, will help a lot with the cafeteria.
Oh, yeah.
I think that'll help a lot.
If they don't do that, one of the things I was thinking is we are getting some additional kindergarten instructional assistant hours. And so we could use a little bit of that time in the cafeteria to support during kindergarten lunch. So it's still like, even if we don't get the hours, which I hope we do, I think we can still make this structure work. Because essentially what we get right now is about an hour and 45. Just to share with you guys too, and I shared with all of the teams a couple weeks ago, I think that this schedule is going to be incredible for the sense that it's going to allow for a really strong co-teaching model in kindergarten through fifth, and then an additional 20 minutes for writing. And so when you think about that, somewhere between an hour and 50 to 2 hours a day, that co-teaching classroom will have a special education teacher in that room. So 2 certified folks working with students. So the model, they're excited about that, and this schedule really allows for that nicely. So I'm really quite pleased with the way that this draft schedule came together, and I was again amazed that I didn't get much feedback at all. People were overall pretty happy with it. So if there's no other discussion about it, can I get a motion to approve the draft 2021 master schedule?
Aye. That's April.
Get a second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I think everybody will be very pleased with that. Let's move on to the next item, and that is just update you guys on some of the hires that we've some people to our family here at Freedom. And I feel like so far we've hired some really good ones to come in for next year. I'm really excited about that. Each time we had a committee of people, and each time it was a unanimous decision, which I think says a whole lot too. Everybody on the committee was in agreement that these 4 people were the ones that they wanted to join our team. So I'll just update you on a few of them. Heather Hodges is going to be joining us from Cedar Grove Elementary. She's been there for 3 years. She's actually been teaching 5th grade at Cedar Grove, and specifically she's taught math, and she also taught social studies for a year. She comes extremely highly recommended. You all know Deanna. She's currently the interim principal at Cedar Grove, and she raved about Heather. Before Deanna had the chance to work with her, though, Brian Flashbart was the principal at Cedar Grove. And I talked to him, too, and he said, "You'd be foolish not to hire her." That was his exact words. And then she also did her student teaching 4 years ago at Pleasant Grove Elementary, and at that time, Melissa Wicker was the principal. And I'll never forget, they came to the teacher job fair in the spring at North Bullitt that year, and Melissa didn't have a job at the time, and so she was trying to get Heather to talk to me because she knew we had an opening. And at the time, Heather ended up, applying and going to Cedar Grove, where she's from, and she went to school there and everything. But I remember Melissa being really high on her as a student, excited about being a part of our team. So I'm excited about that. In addition, Kaylee Kroom was hired in the same crop of interviews that we did. And Kaylee Kroom is the daughter of, you all may know Miss Strange, which is a kindergarten teacher over at Cedar Grove Elementary. She's taught for many years over there. So Kaylee's her daughter. She's been teaching now for half a year, and she's been in JCPS school, correct here, Cochran Elementary. She also comes highly recommended. She did her student teaching at Mount Washington Elementary, and everybody over there spoke incredibly high of her. She did a lot of her student teaching outside, like official student teaching, I guess, or block work. And she was able to observe in Emily Forgey's classroom. And also she worked with Carrie Gary when Carrie Gary was still instructional coach at Cedar Grove. And they both speak very, very highly of Kaylee as well. Principal Cochran was very high on Kaylee. Amber Bryson was hired to replace Jamie Johnson, who's moving to 5th grade math next year. Amber Bryson has a really good resume. She comes from North Bullitt, where she has been special ed teacher as both resource and co-teach in grades 9 through 12. She's taught all content areas. She's also served as the special ed department chair at North Bullitt for the past 3 years. And in addition to that, for the last 2 years, she has been the ARC chairperson and has worked in that capacity. So she has a pretty large experience. And she's really excited about coming and working with students with social and emotional disabilities, which I think you guys know that has become something that has been an area of need for us here at Freedom. So I'm really excited to have somebody that's passionate about that specifically. But in addition to that, she'll be able to do co-teaching in the area of writing, grades kindergarten through 5th, which I think is awesome because that will allow her to start building relationships with students that don't necessarily qualify yet, but might be en route to that. So I think that will be an awesome opportunity. Again, I'm excited to have her. I talked to my brother-in-law, who was the assistant principal at North Bullitt, and I talked to Joni Britt, who's the principal at North Bullitt, and they kind of sounded much like Brian Flashbart did when he talked about Heather. Just like, you'd be foolish not to hire her. They feel like she is a superstar teacher. So I'm really excited to have her on the team as well. The last one is a new name that nobody probably has seen before, and that's Catherine Kosick. We did, most of them were from out of district. There was a couple that were folks that we knew about. Catherine was somebody that we've never heard of her before, but I saw her resume and she had a few years of experience, and her references were all very strong, and her letter of interest was also, you could just tell, very well worded, very thoughtful. And so, we put her on the interview docket, and from the second that she started, I think all of our eyes were, about that big. She came a lot longer than that. So I ended up immediately after the interview, I called and talked to her principal, and her principal indicated that she was heartbroken that they were moving. But her family is relocating to the Louisville area, and principal said that she has a lot of experience in guided reading, a lot of background. And things came through in the interview really clearly. She was pretty passionate about best instructional practices, but she also talked a lot about relationships and behavior management strategies as well. And so I thought it was a very, very good interview. And at the end of it, the right choice for the position. So I think that's really exciting. Now, at this point, we are, as long as we have, similar numbers show up for kindergarten this year. But if we had 60 kindergartners show up, obviously that would change things. But if we have, anywhere between 80 to 90 kindergartners show up, like we've had over the last few years, then I would imagine that that'll be a kindergarten position, and that's what she's been teaching for the past 2 years. So that's exciting as well.
Guided reading and to me it focused a lot on Jim Richardson, which is what we do at Freedom. I felt like she would be a really, really good addition to our school.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my notes here, and you touched on most of what you were saying there. And she uses a lot of positive reinforcement. She talked about creating a positive environment with kids, and she talked a little bit about the guided reading. She uses the Daily 5 running records. I like what she said also about her math and how she ran her math in her reading groups and what she did, and I think she would fit in really well either in
PLC. And so I think from a personality standpoint and from an instructional standpoint, she's going to fit our group here very, very well. So
I agree.
All of that to say, I think we got 4 really, really strong hires. I'm really excited about that, and I think they're going to immediately be able to contribute to the team that we have, which is great. Any questions about those folks? Okay. The last thing is the 2021 SBDM budget. Now, it's too big to put on. And it's not going to look incredibly different than what it has in years past. And again, these things are flexible. So throughout the year, if we needed to move some items around, we have the ability to do that. But this is what we've kind of allocated the money towards. You can see for Section 6, which is SBDM, we have $62,391. allocated there. And I'm just going to kind of scroll through here so you can see where the bigger chunks of money are going. You can see we're still having to pool some money to supplement. I think it's our RTA grant. It is that we don't have quite enough in that line to cover the full amount. So we have to supplement that with $7,700. And we're actually estimating on the high end, so it may be a little less than that for that salary. So that's a bigger chunk there. You can see about $3,000 for registrations. That's going to be for conferences and those types of things that we send people to. There's a couple conferences that we go to. There's one conference that we go to every year, and that's KCM. We also have been sending a couple folks to the reading conference as well in the fall. So we'll continue to do that. There's a couple other conferences that I have some interest in possibly going to and sending a couple people to in the upcoming year through Solution Tree. So I think that's something that we'll look at as well. You can see printing and binding that's a big expense, $2,000 there. And then general supplies, $16,376. As you scroll down, computer and related equipment, $5,000. And that would be for some of the updating that we've been doing. Now there's a possibility, and nothing's official at this point, that the district could be providing more devices. So our goal, and I'll just tell you right now, our goal is to get 1-to-1 K through 5. My hope is that we might be able to do that this year, but if not, that's going to be a goal for the next few years for sure. So we have money set aside there. You can see software as well, $5,000. That goes very quickly when you're talking about some of the items that we try to buy for students to be able to access. It goes by very quickly. Under the principal's office, that's where the copier, that's a huge chunk of money there, $9,000 for that, for our top of the line copiers that we have. We also have $1,400 set aside for telephone, $2,000 set aside for travel and hotel. And again, that's going towards those conferences that we talked about because we have to have lodging for folks. And those are the big expenses. There's some other smaller items in there, but you can see the grand total, $63,591 of allocated money there. Any questions about the tentative SBDM budget for 2021?
Can you explain the kindergarten and general supplies money?
Sure. Now I could be wrong, and I'll need to check with Miss Carter on this, but I'm thinking that goes towards some of the items for kindergarten kickoff and for registration. So when they get registered for preschool or for kindergarten, and we give them, all of the welcome to freedom items, I believe that's where that money's going. I will get a definite answer on that for you tomorrow, though, and I'll send that to you. Any other questions about the SBDM budget? Can I get a motion to approve?
Aye. That's April.
Thank you, April.
Second?
Tamara.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion approved. All right, let me go back to, I believe that was the last item. It was. Any other questions, items to consider as we look forward? I know we got SBDM elections coming up. I'll be working with Leslie on getting that process started. Any other questions before we adjourn this evening?
Sorry, I had technical issues earlier. It cut out when you were talking about the new hires. I know 2 of those positions were hired based on this year's numbers. Right. What will happen if we don't have those same numbers next year?
So from Overdale, because what happened was they were overstaffed and we were understaffed. And so after the start of the year. They will potentially move people around depending. So there's always the possibility that if we're overstaffed come in the fall, that they would take somebody that was hired and move them to a building that's understaffed. But that's only if you're significantly understaffed. So I don't feel like that's a huge risk, but it's always a possibility.
What do our numbers need to be to keep everyone on staff? And if we do have to lose someone, how is that decided who goes?
I think in this case, it would be the last one in's the first one out. Yeah, I'd have to check with HR on that, but I'm almost positive that that's the way that it works. They also, before they do that, they also open it up for volunteers, which, I don't think we would probably have anybody that would volunteer. But that's how a lot of people get moved around in the district in those situations. I don't know the exact numbers. I would say I will feel really good if we get to about 80 or more kindergartners. I feel because the numbers that the staffing positions that we were given are based off the kids that we already have, plus based off of projected forward kindergarten students that are estimated based off this year. So we know that this year we had 93 kindergartners, and that's a lot. So we probably won't have 93 kindergartners show up again, but I think if we could stay within the ballpark of 80 plus, we're probably going to be in good shape. I think where I would start getting concerned is if we're, significantly less than that. But I don't have an exact number because there's a whole algorithm to how that's calculated, and I couldn't tell you right now off the top of my head what that is. But we need to get as close to 80 or more as we can. Right now we have 35 kindergartners that are registered, I think, for kindergarten next year. I've also approved some transfers as well, and I don't. Some of those are counted in that number, and some are not. So, I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it was this time last year, but I don't think that it was and then kept saying, well, here's another one, and here's another one, and here's another one, and it got almost to a silly level where we're real. So, I think we're going to be close to 80, if not over it. I mean, 35 already that we know about, and we still have months. So right now they're doing the online registration, and so our front office staff is available to help them with that. Right now, a lot of that's being done via telephone, and but that yes, we're not taking walk-ins at this point, but we are walking people through it on the phone.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? In closing, if we can get a motion to adjourn.
Aye, it's April.
There you go. Second.
Second by Leslie.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
All right, guys. Thank you. Motion approved. Y'all have a great evening, and